start with Mr. Piyush Pandey, Inspector General, Special Protection Group. So please join us on the stage. A big round of applause for our eager speaker. Ma'am Neeta Verma, Deputy Director General, NIC, National Informatics Center. So please, ma'am. Then I invite Mr. Prakash Kumar, National Technology Officer, Microsoft India. So please join us on the stage. Mr. Rodolphe Roshan Sekura, Solution Architect, Wipro Infotech. So please join us. Mr. Anish Dhawan, Regional Manager, VMware India, North and East. So please join us. Mr. Manu Kalra, Director, Product Management, Asia Pacific and Japan, FireEye. Now I request Ma'am Neeta Verma to address and to moderate the session afterwards. Please. So I request you, ma'am, to address the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me thank organizers for having me here. It's a pleasure talking to all of you. While the theme of the session is efficiency and security of cloud, and we definitely will touch, and I'm sure many of my eminent co-panelists are really going to talk a lot about this. But I thought this is the right opportunity for me to tell you a kind of government cloud which is available today, because I felt it was all the more important when I sensed from some of the speakers in the first session they didn't even know that there's a cloud service like this exists. So with this, I just take few minutes to run you through like what it is about, and then we go on to discussing the theme of the session. So when under the Meghraj, this is the first cloud. Meghraj must have heard a lot about in the first session with from reading, so there's no need talking about. So under Meghraj initiative, NIC had set up the first cloud, national cloud service for government as a whole. These were a set of objectives which were given to us as a part of our mandate to set up this cloud, and I'm sure all of you must have heard during the previous session, so let's not spend time much deliberating. Infrastructure elasticity and secure cloud services were a couple of things which we really focused on. And from here we move on to a typical project approvals and all. And these were the 5 criteria which we set ourselves while we were trying to draw a larger architecture for the cloud as a whole for the country. And among these things, 2 things which we really focused with an experience which we have of running government data centers for so many years. But 2 things. One is that whatever architecture we work, it has to be generic in design so that we are able to integrate any cloud technology solution available in the market today or in the times to come, including even the open source technologies. Second thing was, it should really make the government a very, very simple to use. Self-service portal will be there. But now with cloud, earlier there has to be a complete system through which you used to go. You have a requirement, you give it to IT team, then there is RFP and all those things. Now maybe initially when you're trying to procure the cloud services, you may have someone to assist you. But having on board, if you really want to leverage on the elasticity of cloud, really want to introduce that cost efficiency, you need to take some cost practically live on the portal, how much resources you want to scale, when do you want to scale down. That means people even the administrative level, people even at the management level are going to interface with this. So therefore this interface has to be very, very simple to use. All those typical jargons of cloud, IaaS, PaaS, all that should be removed from there, and it should be the way they have been asking services from us in the past. So with that concept, we have basically built this portal. And also to make best use of the resources which we have deployed, we have tried to segregate our sort of group our infrastructure in a way that different kind of machines, they are of different redundancy, they've been configured in a way so that they suit to development cluster, staging cluster, production cluster, their network configuration, their security configurations, and at the same time their basic CPU configurations and all to the management cluster have been defined so that it is not only most cost efficient, most resource efficient, it is also simple to use. Like when you go to production cluster, if you want to make anything live, you really need to cross through all those cyber security requirements of the government which has come from certain NIC cyber security. So it's a process. However, if you want to do development, if you want to test your server, you do not need all these restrictions. So those processes have been inbuilt so that when you what kind of resource you are asking, and so corresponding kind of a rule process has been set across so that it becomes the best possible and the most easy thing for you to use. Same is with the storage layer. The way we procure storage, sometimes I really wonder. I mean, every third month I have been told whatever we bought last time, 500 terabytes or 1 terabyte, it's over. It's amazing, but that's fact of life. So we've also tried to see, depending on 10 years of experience, government using storage, that what kind of different applications they have. And I have to also try and set storage into 3 different categories so that we give. So somebody is only trying to copy log files, so what kind of storage is it? Just somebody is only trying to keep a backup thing, or someone is really like to do OLTP kind of an application. So that's how whole thing is configured, and that's the generic design on which it's going to go. Operations wise, very simple. First 4 operations you have to do once in lifetime. The 5th operation is there, which is an address over secure network. Where do you go and you keep asking for resources, keep scaling up, scaling up. So there's a dashboard which you work. First 4 is only one time, because being in government we need to comply to certain procedures of identification of the user and things like that. So that is what has been built into it. This is what our cloud portal looks like. It is available at cloud.gov.in, and this is what, there's a helpline number in case you are not able to, you get stuck somewhere. Though I personally feel it's been made so simple that you should not really. And it's a multi-location cloud as of today and completely seamless from you. Right now it has 2 nodes. One is in data center at Delhi and another is in Hyderabad. And very soon we are going to plug 2 more nodes, which is from Pune and Bhubaneswar. So the philosophy is that as long as you do not want, we do not get into a complexity of you asking that whether you want to go to Pune or you want to go to Bhubaneswar. However, if you are informed and alert user and you feel, no, my data has to be in Delhi, so we at the same time give you that flexibility. So choice is yours depending on the kind of level of services you basically activate your account accordingly. And all these services, all these nodes are available through a common portal. Everybody signs on, whether it's a user or it's an administrator, finally signs on. But as you go, your requirements of authentication keep getting complex depending on what kind of role you have to play on that cloud. To make our offerings very, very simple, we have just kept it simple thing. Do you need a web server? This is how government has been asking us, departments have been asking us. Do you need an application server, development server, basic server, that is typically a EAS kind of setup, or a storage service? You just need some storage so that you could back up your files, or you could just keep a copy of your data, or you want to copy your desktops, whichever way. Or you need software as a service or database as a service. So you just see, and after there are a couple of simple screens which you need to fill few parameters and you're live. As time is passing, our focus is more on software as a service. To begin with, we have 3 services already available. One is GUI search. That means any government application or any government website today wants to do a local custom search to their website, they can simply call for this service and do it. They do not have to go to this Google custom search and all those kind, don't have to get into complexity of doing search. This is a common search platform which can be integrated simply as a service, and already 200 and plus government websites are already using this service. Open Data is a platform, as you know, data-driven governance and data analytics is really going to play a huge role in the next few months or so. So we have developed this Open Data platform, and this is available for the central government. In any case it is done, but any organization or any state government or any district administration, if want to launch their own data platform, they can simply call it as a service. They simply have to log in, fill in few forms, and then also say that what kind of theme and all, and their data platform goes live, and from there, and it's already configured, optimized, and already security tightened. So you don't have to get into any of those complexities. Web Analytics is a service which all of you must be knowing from Google Analytics. So that service we've been running for quite some time, but recently we have moved that also onto cloud because its resource requirement really goes very, very variable. So this cloud we launched sometime in I think February first week 2014, and as of today we have received requests for availing cloud from over 150 different entities, and what really amazes me that without any publicity, this requests are coming not only from central government departments, they are coming from state government departments, they were municipal corporations, and they are district admins. A couple of panchayat requests also have got. So that shows the kind of interest or enthusiasm people have in using cloud services. And it has been such that we had done a modest beginning because we didn't want to really put in money before we really see how the uptake is. But uptake is so encouraging that we are needed to now upscale our infrastructure in the next 3 months by almost making it 3 times. And as we are going and interacting with the users, we felt that though all this cloud is self-service kind of a thing, but when we work with our departments, we realize that the self-service 100% is not going to work with them. You also, at least for the basic services, you need to introduce managed services also. So this is the kind of services which is on the anvil, which we need to introduce in the next few months. What is where we are going ahead? What we are trying to do is we are now trying to sense it. People are showing enthusiasm. They are coming on the cloud, but when it comes to finally availing, sizing their machines and how do you really go it, they fall kind of. It feels there's some kind of a hand holding or some kind of a sensitization is needed. How do you really use it? So that's what we are now doing, one-to-one sessions if there's an organization, or we also do. We have now started this month doing workshops and seminars across various states to familiarize them with these things. Enable department, because this is now a paradigm shift in the which they used to procure. They are so used to buying those servers and softwares. Now suddenly you are buying this thing where on the day one you do, okay, I need X resource, but during the year I may go to access to 2. So how do they really, educate their finance department? How do they put up their files and proposals? So these kind of, how do we, so we're trying to, department is actually helping us with policies and kind of administrative provisions through these things can be actually, it's happening, but it's taking some time because everywhere this learning is happening. So how do we really leapfrog this part? That's where we're really working with the department and trying to see that if we could get some enablements in provision. And what we're trying to now do is, because we've been running data center services for over maybe 15 years now. So to encourage people, we are now telling our colleagues in NIC as well as otherwise that today if you develop any application, please develop an application which is cloud enabled. But if you do not enable an application which is cloud enabled, which has the characteristics to be able to scale up and scale down, you will not be able to make any sense out of it. You will be just using cloud as a fashion word, nothing more than that. So you need to start getting into applications. Also motivating some of the very old applications, but continue to be very relevant, that to convert them, trying to work out where we can even handhold them to some extent, helping them that what does it mean when I'm saying a cloud enabled application. And so that's another thing which we're trying to do. So we had begun with certain objectives, but as we have moved, to me it looks, what is this cloud going to give? It's basically going to give us 2 things as an outcome, as we see in all the reports. One is it will enable government departments to focus on their core competence, which is developing, implementing, rolling out e-governance applications or citizen services. They need not really worry about procurement of infrastructure, scaling out, or even management of infrastructure. And this is in turn also going to help them experiment new models, because they have to just have an application, or if an application change its mode of service delivery, and you can experiment. You can take resources for 3 months, run it. If you find it's not working well, go on to the next model. And this is going to give a rise to a lot of innovation in the way people have been delivering, government has been delivering, because your time to go live and time to come back from that model is not those 5 years servers we have bought, now we have to be there with them. So this is we're going to see a lot of innovation also in the times to come. That's all. This is my team, because this is a team work and which has really worked for over a year, I should say 14 months. This team has worked hard to make this cloud and continues to be equally enthusiastic. Thank you.
So now I invite, if I may take a pleasure, if there can be industry presentations first. So we have some industry presentations and we have eminent speakers for that. So may I invite Mr. Prakash Kumar, National Technology Officer, Microsoft India, to address the audience.
Thank you, Ravi and Alex, for giving me this opportunity. I come halfway between government speakers and industry speakers. Okay. When I was asked to speak on security and efficiency, looking at the profile of the attendees here, I decided not to get into the technical part. And I thought, let me put before you the business case and some evidence which will enthuse you to adopt more and more of cloud. And what I'm going to do here is to share some statistics, some use cases, and share some scenarios where you can use cloud to improve your delivery of services. We all have heard the two upper points, less government and more governance in last few days, and do more faster with less. And that's possible in a big way by going for cloud, which removes the burden of building and maintaining large computer systems. Lots of speakers have talked about that. Provides unlimited computing and storage capacity. Increases disaster preparedness with built-in backup. Reduces cost, time commitment upfront, and simplifies access with secure capabilities. And that's the reason lots of governments are also adopting it in a big way. So here are some of the statistics. You see, it has grown 300% in 6 years worldwide, adoption of cloud, from 46 billion in 2008 to 150 billion in 2014. The global cloud computing industry growth rate is currently 5 times higher than that of global IT growth rate. There were 2 surveys done in recent past, and the results of those surveys were that out of every 10 CIOs, 8 out of them, they are delivering their infrastructure through private cloud. And out of them, 6 out of every 10 consider cloud computing to be their top priority. There are 50 million servers worldwide today, and 60% of them are already virtualized. Of global 1,000 companies, 30% are expected to broker 2 or more cloud services for both internal and external users. And the list goes on. We can see here, okay, half the US government has moved to the cloud. Now that's another big milestone here. And the same survey also found out what is the biggest activity which is happening on the cloud, and surprisingly that's banking. We don't consider that, or we don't put that, keeping in view the kind of security consciousness they have. So apart from that, it also brings down the cost, and users who are moving their apps to the cloud, they save on an average 21% per year. 84% of CIOs report that they have cut application costs by moving to the cloud. Companies that use cloud to deploy their applications spend 1/4 on the personnel, and the firms which have shifted to cloud and managed services half reduced their IT expenditure up to 25%, 1/3 of them by 25% or more, and 13% of them, the saving was more than 50%. Now comes the security part. And there is general concern that if we move our data from our own data centers put it somewhere, is it going to be secure? And this was mentioned even in the first session. And here is the response of, again, some of the IT professionals and the CIOs. More than half of IT professionals rank security as the top reason for migrating applications to the cloud. Of those currently using cloud, 85% are confident in their cloud provider's ability to provide a secure environment. And 56% of survey respondents trust the ability of cloud providers to protect the sensitive and confidential data entrusted to them. Now, what happens if you are managing your own data centers? You need to update the security, all such aspects, day-to-day basis. On the other hand, if the agency whose bread and butter lies only in this, they put in their best effort, and as Mr. Pramanik mentioned in the first session, Microsoft has a cloud offering called Azure. More than 1 million servers are there. Now, and a huge amount of revenue comes from there. If that is not secure, then naturally the business will go somewhere else. And hence, the more and more CIOs and even the CXOs have started believing, and now that the systems, the cloud is offering more security than what their own IT systems can do, apart from cost, agility, and other things which we saw earlier. Mr. Bhaskar had mentioned about 2-3 certification. In fact, Windows Azure has accreditation for all of them, starting from ISO 27001, SOC 1, SOC 2, Cloud Security Alliance, Cloud Control Matrix, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, UK G Cloud Impact Level 2 accreditation, HIPAA, Family Education Rights and Privacy, FedRAMP, and FISMA. Now, infrastructure which has so much of accreditation, no other individually owned private cloud or even the data center can have that kind of accreditation. So with this, I put before you the case for how and why there is a need for even the government agency to move to the cloud, which decision has already been taken, but also to the public cloud, rather than keeping everything in what Neeta ma'am is creating. In fact, we are one of the partners of in that effort, which has gone live and on which about which she talked about earlier. So let me give you some use cases from the government across the world. See, disaster and crisis management is something where you need to bring back, and the time taken to bring back the services is very, very important. So in Japan, when they had the earthquake in March 2011, they used Microsoft Azure for putting up their application, for providing information and many other interactive services for those who are affected by the earthquake. Mexico Internal Revenue Agency, the government decided that all taxpayers whose tax returns are more than 10 million peso, which is almost 10 million rupees, for them any transaction which costs more than 1,000 peso, the electronic record has to be uploaded. Now just imagine one government declaration meant that all electronic transactions above 1,000 peso has to be reported by the seller and the buyer. They had to do the entire thing in 3 months. They went for cloud-based service. So what happens, they created the interface, the portal for where the buyer seller could update the data, upload the data, and the information then flows into the data center of the revenue department. And interestingly, the tax department is in Mexico, but the data center, the cloud data center of Microsoft which was used was in US, or rather is US. Third one, innovative citizen services, kind of like 311 application in US or similar kind of thing which you put there, and there is huge response from people to avail those services. You need to have that kind of elasticity, and that only they can provide, and there are some of the states which have gone for Microsoft Azure. Similarly, for enhancing government delivery system, open government, and the big data. The big data, one example I give you here is weather and disaster relief data is now being used, structured and unstructured both, to verify insurance claims. So if you have claimed insurance of crop failure, then they cross-check it with data coming from weather and other sources and match it and see whether your claim is correct or not. Similarly, the same big data concept is being used by Thai police for investigation purposes, where they get data even from social networking sites. And they are compiling it from newspapers here and there, and then using that, and they have been able to reduce their investigation time dramatically. So this is my last slide. Some of the scenarios where how we can use the cloud. Based on my own experience of long years in the government, I see first application is for development and test. Once you decide that I'm going to develop an application, in our time we were acquiring the machines required for that. You don't need to do that. The second one is for app development takes place, testing is done, and then you need infrastructure for hosting that. That comes from the cloud. Flexible storage, recovery, on-demand infrastructure, and then it also brings a new thing, which is identification of users, whether internal users or external users, based on identity, what kind of role the user could be given, and of course the data analytics. In a short period of time, I thought let me put before you some of the statistics and use cases which put across the point that how the governments in other parts of the world are going in a big way for using public cloud, and we can also do similarly in the country. Thank you, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for this very short but informative presentation. I hope other speakers will also follow the fashion and cooperate with us. With this, I now invite Mr. Rodolphe Roshan-Sikura, Solution Architect, Wipro Infotech. So please address the audience.
Very good evening to everyone here. The session that I'm going to carry out is a bit technical, but I've tried not to put in too many technical jargons. Since morning, it has been quite inquisitive for us to know what are the elements that government is actually taking on from a cloud perspective, and we have got quite a good insights in terms of the Meghraj cloud initiative which has been taken. The purpose of my presentation is to come up with or propose a framework, a model which government can actually look into, which would enable them to derive benefits into the cloud. So this is not too technical, but it has few of the technical elements required for some understanding. So just to broadly speak in terms of what cloud entails, it consists of the cloud consumer, which are the end government users or the public. It consists of a cloud provider, which is the service provider, which actually provides all the capabilities in terms of delivering these services on cloud. You have the cloud carrier, which connects the cloud consumer to the cloud broker, which could be a telecom media, a carrier. And then there are two more elements into this. You have the cloud auditor, which takes care of the cloud related audits for the applications, for the information which is residing on the cloud. And then you have a cloud broker. A cloud broker is a new concept which has been introduced here. The intention of proposing this model is government can actually look at this framework and then identify how it can bring in governance through the cloud auditor and cloud broker coming in place. So what we are referring here is cloud consumer, cloud auditor and cloud broker being elements of the governance model. Slightly to go further into this architecture, you will see that the cloud provider provides everything in terms of cloud services, right from orchestration and cloud service management. On the orchestration, there is a service layer which enables everyone, the cloud consumer, to actually avail the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service layer. And now we have the cloud broker coming into place. How does the cloud broker actually help us? The cloud broker actually gives an interface for the cloud consumer to avail cloud services from multiple service providers. So what we are looking here is, in an event, government takes an initiative to go ahead and tie up with other service providers. The cloud broker would actually play a key role here. The cloud broker has different models on which it can help provide an interface to the cloud consumer. The following slides, I go to each of these blocks to give further insights. So from a cloud broker perspective, it could be the central body of the government itself which can take up this cloud broker role model, or it could be a third party. There are different ways in which the model of brokerage can work. So the first is intermediation, wherein the cloud broker actually takes service from a service provider and then it adds certain value to it. The value addition would be in terms of performance management, in terms of SLA monitoring, in terms of creating the APIs which are required for the cloud consumer to avail the services of the cloud service provider. Service aggregation is a model wherein the cloud broker actually goes and avails services from multiple service providers. Here there are n number of service providers. Based on the benefit that government can identify in terms of availing the service from a specific service provider, the service aggregation role comes in, wherein the service aggregator, the cloud broker in the role of service aggregator, will pick and choose services. It would be transparently known to government and then provide interface to the cloud consumer to avail the service. Cloud arbitrage is a third model wherein the cloud broker actually decides which is the best possible mechanisms that government can avail, and he takes a decision himself. So the cloud under the service arbitrage, the cloud broker actually has the authority to take decisions. Key important things to know is cloud broker, in terms of its interface with service provider, has to provide certain functionalities. So data portability is one, wherein data from one service provider can be moved on into another service provider. Service interoperability, wherein similar service can run on multiple service providers. And system portability, wherein actual virtual machines can be moved from one service provider to another service provider. Here, the cloud broker is taking the role of a data custodian. The cloud auditor is a function. It is a role which again can be done either by the government body itself, or it could be through an outsourced vendor, wherein the cloud auditor carries out several audits pertaining to the services which are being provided by the service provider. It could be a security audit, it could be the privacy impact audit, or the performance audit. Whatever has been agreed by the service provider, it is the cloud auditor who now tries and engages into a scenario wherein the cloud auditor actually goes and checks into the nitty-gritties of whether those services are actually being delivered. The cloud auditor also looks from a compliance perspective, whether all the regulatory adherences are being made. Cloud consumer is the actual consumer of the cloud services. The cloud consumer is the owner of data. In this scenario, the classification of data is done by the cloud consumer, and the cloud consumer defines who has access control for all of the applications which are being provided on cloud. So based on the definition of data classification which is being done by cloud consumer, cloud broker takes on the role of managing and implementing all those services for the cloud consumer. It is important to know that though applications are being moved onto cloud, the accountability of data still resides with the cloud consumer. The responsibility actually goes on to the cloud broker, or it could be the service provider, but the accountability of the data still resides with the cloud consumer. Another important aspect is the end user who is actually availing the cloud services. It is very important that security from the end user perspective is also being taken care of, because at times the attackers would actually use end users environment to intrude into the cloud environment if proper security mechanisms are not in place. Just to give you an insight of what cloud service provider can help us with, there is always a fear that there would be loss of control when it comes to cloud being hosted onto a third-party service provider. So access control mechanisms can be deployed, monitoring can be done by the cloud consumer, which can again be looked into by the cloud broker to see how control of data is being taken care of. Identity management mechanisms can be deployed, wherein using IDM mechanisms, directory services can be availed to actually extend the authentication process from the cloud consumer onto the cloud service provider. What happens over here is the cloud broker engages in the whole process to ensure that APIs are being developed to actually do the handshake. From the perspective of trust, where again there is an apprehension that data might be leaked, a standard policy language can be structured in which I have seen in the presentation, which is already been taken care of as of now. Certifications are being taken. Certifications should be looked in terms of the hosted cloud environment. Risk assessment should be done from time to time into the hosted model from third-party audits. And if requirement, government can actually take a decision that there should not be trans-border information flow, that is, the information should reside solely within India. From a multi-tenancy perspective, it could be a private cloud that government can actually look into, or a community cloud. And there needs to be strong separation in terms of logical and physical aspects for ensuring that security is being taken care of. Cloud service management is an entity which the cloud service provider actually engages in. The cloud broker here plays an important role, as I mentioned here again. It is the data portability, the service interoperability, and the system portability which the cloud broker derives benefit from by engaging with multiple service providers. Just a final slide on various solutions that we have worked on. We have case scenarios wherein cooperative banks have actually come together, set up a cloud which is more of a public-private cloud because it is being shared by multiple cooperative banks and hosted into a third-party data center, which is Wipro data center. We also have seen applications such as email being looked in for being hosted onto a cloud environment. Earlier in the presentations, it was mentioned that even public data can be looked on as one of the means to be put onto the cloud environment. And alternatively, from a disaster recovery perspective, government can also think of utilizing the public cloud environment. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I invite the next speaker, Mr. Anish Dhawan, Regional Manager, VMware India, North and East.
I'm sure presentation is not what you're looking forward to. Right. Looking at the environment in after lunch, it's always very difficult to maintain the interest levels. But this is a fairly simple presentation. It actually quite a few of points that I wanted to discuss kind of got covered in various presentations. Right. So, like I will take on from where Prakash mentioned, right, that one of the main reasons of customers when surveyed worldwide who adopted cloud computing, right, the reasons or the primary reason that they thought it's best to adopt cloud computing was security. Ironically, this also is the reason for people who don't adopt cloud computing, right? You know, it's rated as one of the most prominent reasons for not adopting cloud computing for the ones who've not done so. And really speaking, when we discuss, so my points are clearly around security and efficiency in cloud systems. Right? Clearly speaking, there's nothing different which has happened from security threats in the physical world to a virtual world to a cloudy world, if I may put so. Right? So the point is only the playing field has changed. You've got more exposure, right? When you were your own organizations, you were a little less exposed. Now that you get onto a cloud computing, the entire surface area for attack is much larger and it's much more exposed. That primarily is the difference. Otherwise, the attacks continue to be the same. You've got the same phishing which attacks your company websites, right? And the same threats continue to be. And these are few of them. Let me just go past them, right? If I was to look at, this is an IDC survey which was done, right? And really speaking, people who adopted cloud computing, right, felt that yes, quite a few of them, that their cloud service providers are fairly competent. The ones who had not adopted felt that there's a lot to do and there's a lot more spending to be done. And when you surveyed the cloud service providers who were delivering the cloud services, they felt that, you know, security is never enough. But it will get defined by the customers that I carry. Now that's very interesting, because when you talk about cloud computing, right, you deliver IT as a service. IT as a service could be infrastructure, could be desktop, could be an application, could be just storage. So the responsibility or the security threat actually changes from the kind of consumer you are. Suppose you are consuming an application as a service, right, or software as a service from a customer. You've got no ownership, right, apart from the fact that you've got to protect your data somehow. You take infrastructure as a service, the entire security system that you need to build around the infrastructure that you carry, that your security or your application system is completely your ownership. You take a piece of complete data center, virtual data center, then the entire issue of security and resolving it completely lies with you. So the responsibility and the threats which are perceived actually change from the way you're consuming the services when they come across, right? So when the people were surveyed, right, the ones who were, now this is a survey which was done by Cloud Security Alliance, which is an initiative by not just one, it's many companies put together, of which VMware, Microsoft, everybody is a part. Right, so when they came across and when they surveyed the cloud environment which is available worldwide, they came out with top 9 threats, and they mentioned there, right, there for you to read. You want any more detail on them, we will get into that. I thought I will just focus on the last 2, right, which you're looking at. One is the insufficient knowledge, right, for the person who is going to go and consume this as a service. It is very important when you go to another department or consume services or cloud services for them, for you to have sufficient knowledge of what you're getting in for. Not from a technical perspective, but from an SLA, delivery and ownership perspective. It's very important. So that really means, while it might look very simple, there's a lot of groundwork that you need to do in understanding what is it that you're getting in with, what are your responsibilities, what are the cloud service providers' responsibilities, so that you don't end up getting into something you can't get out of without damage, of course. And the last one is the sheer technology vulnerabilities. Now, this is more relevant to people who provide cloud services like NIC, where we partner with NIC in their cloud services as well. So, what is it that actually changes, right, in your deployment in this scenario when you think of people who are going to either deliver cloud services or whether you go in for your own organization-wide own cloud computing, right? Which could be a scenario with few of the departments who would choose to bring up their own data center. Clearly, the older way of actually defining security, right, completely does not gel with the dynamic or the velocity at which the business happens within a cloud computing environment, right? And when you've got such a dynamic environment where you don't define boundaries, where applications are going to work, where resource pools are dynamic, right? Anything which is physical or requires plumbing in some fashion becomes inflexible. In fact, it becomes the biggest prohibitor to one of the factors for adopting cloud computing, which is agility. And obviously, because it is physical and you cannot predict the way the load is going to move or the application the way it is going to move, you end up making so many combinations that it end up being more and more complex every time you want to add anything to it. And obviously, cost factor. And this is a law, very simple. More the complexity, more you pay for every unit of flexibility or load that you put across. When you define security, it has to be layered. It's actually, if you think it from a management perspective, there are three layers you define. One is an enforcement layer, right, where you put all these softwares which are going to enforce changes or protect you, right? Intrusion detection system, something which Rudolph also covered, right? Your antivirus softwares and multiple others. The other is the control management. How do you control these softwares that you deployed, so many of them? And the third layer is where you define actually policy-based how these softwares are going to work in an automated fashion. But in a physical deployment fashion, right, you clearly have to have layered security around your data center when you're delivering it to your end users, or if you're consuming it from somebody else, it is important for you to go and verify whether they're offering this layered level of securities that they've done themselves, right? These are the layers which typically form part of the infrastructure piece which is going to deliver these services for you. I'm talking about infrastructure as a service, right? Because if you go beyond to software as a service, quite a few of them get covered by different softwares which are available otherwise. Hardware, certified hardware, most important. Ensure that the hardware that you buy is certified and compliant, right? Intel has a trusted execution technology wherein they certify, right, from a virtualization perspective, what softwares and how they should function. So it's very important that you take only certified hardware and the software which is certified to run cloud computing or virtualization on that hardware. And it is very easy to find because all of them actually have their compatibility and certification lists. Hypervisor, very simple. Smaller the code, shorter the code, lesser is the exposure for a hacker to attack. So software base, any software which is softer in footprint is much more secure because it is lesser and lesser visible on a worldwide span when you start looking at it, and it's difficult to attack. You've got multiple options, you got to choose the one which gives you the lowest surface area of attack. There are certifications, right? Prakash did mention a few about their solutions available. There are certifications available otherwise also for an hypervisor, but there are also certified solutions of deployment. For example, if you are going to deliver database as a service, or you're going to deliver any other application or infrastructure as a service, there are certified architectures that you should go with because they are tried, tested, and they have been tested by experts around the world from a security and vulnerability perspective. Network, the most important area which is coming up now, because what happens is when you have a fixed defined boundaries and you have fixed defined boundaries, right, from a network perspective, right, and your load is continuously moving, the static security controls really don't scale up to the requirements that you have. it is important that you start looking at software-defined networking, right? Wherein you are able to create virtual boundaries for the loads that are going to work in. And suppose your loads are migrating in the cloud environment, your security also should migrate along with those loads. Yes, very important, right? I'm just going to point on one portion of this, which is, for example, antivirus. Now, till date, the only way of deploying antivirus for securing your own infrastructure, whether it is server or desktop, was actually putting an antivirus inside the server. In a cloud environment, that's not required. All the antivirus, we don't provide the antivirus solutions, obviously, right? But we do provide a platform for various antivirus solutions, right? Solution providers to come up. All they need to do now is to have one virtual machine which is secure enough to do entire antivirus scanning of the cloud infrastructure. And it actually secures the perimeter from an antivirus perspective for the entire environment. Yeah, just animation of this. And compliance. This is the biggest issue, right? At least in the corporate sector, this is the biggest issue from an IT audit perspective of how to ensure compliance. It becomes much more simpler, right? When you have a cloud or a virtualized environment, because you just create a profile of how you want your environment to be compliant. You define the standards there, and the softwares and the solutions available today actually scan and tell you what are the vulnerabilities or what are the compliance breaches that are happening which can be corrected so far, which is much more simpler than actually going across to every system and checking whether it is compliant or not. And you've got out-of-box solutions available, right? So like I said, I just wanted to focus on the last two portions from a security perspective. Efficiency and security go part and parcel of the operations that you do, or the operations that anybody who's delivering your cloud services, it is an integral part of their services because of the scale that they run. It is very important they run it efficiently, otherwise they run out of bandwidth pretty soon for the sense of customers and compromise on the performance or the SLAs that they give to their customers. Clearly three objectives, right, from an operational efficiency perspective. One is the quality of service that you deliver in your cloud environment, right, which is how you are able to predict or how you are able to identify the issues which are there as part of the infrastructure or as part of the overall cloud environment that you are running. How optimized you are in running this, right, because you could have customers who could be actually, or you could be having users, or you could be yourselves be the ones who are actually deciding, okay, this is the size of infrastructure I need for myself. You over-provision that, and over a period of time it continues to run over-provision, while the same could have been reclaimed and given to somebody else as a service, right? So how well are we able to capture that? And obviously the last one which I covered in the last point was the compliance part. Today, if you were to do in a traditional fashion, this is how it functions. You monitor data overload, alerts come, you point fingers, the issue is with database, the issue is with the storage, the issue is with the server vendor, and then again you kind of start doing too much of over provisioning to get over this issue next time, right, before it arises. A simple way is just segregate your operational efficiency into three portions. Start using operational analytics, right, which can help you predict what is going wrong and what can go wrong. Policy-based automation reduces your manual intervention in actually ensuring that you get the standard policy across where you want, and you don't have manual intervention or you need a person 24/7 to work for you. And obviously a unified or a single pane of management helps you look at this whole scenario both from 30,000 feet as well as from the ground level. That's kind of the presentation I want to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite the next speaker, Mr. Manu Kalra, Director, Product Management, Asia Pacific and Japan, FireEye.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I had a presentation for this event, but I've decided against doing that. Looking at a lot of the imperatives that have been laid out for this conclave, I find it quite intriguing that a lot of people have spoken about security, and I will toe the line of security because that's what my employer does. I would want to present to you two very intriguing and interesting use cases for cloud security. One of them, they both actually pertain to the way the trust model and the workflow are exploited by the attackers. Now, the attackers that I'm talking about are what we call today as the advanced targeted attacks or the advanced persistent threats. Often it is asked that what is an advanced targeted attacks or what is an advanced persistent threat? Well, the answer is that advanced persistent threat is not a what but a who. These are resourceful individuals sponsored by nation states who have all the motivations, resources, and the capability to go after your assets in the cloud or anywhere else. So the way these two use cases that I'm going to talk about work is, number one, first of all, the first one exploits the user trust model of an application that is hosted in the cloud. The attacker will exploit a vulnerable web application and plant their code, malicious code, in the cloud. An unsuspecting user, when they visit the cloud service hosted by anybody, is then infected by the exploit code, and the exploit code then executes its objective of downloading a bigger portion of malware onto the end user system. This malware then passes on the control to the command and control of the attacker, wherein the attacker can then use the own system to either A, expand laterally, or B, to execute on data stealing. The reason why it is so simple is because most of the data encryption and most of the other masking technologies are rendered useless because you are seeing the client's perspective, the end user's perspective. Second is an exploit of the trust model again, where the workflow itself is exploited. When I say workflow, most of the sites actually encourage the user to upload the files and data. The attacker has to phish the end user, plant an exploit in the data that the user is going to upload, data and files the user is going to upload, and then put that in the cloud. The unsuspecting backend processing engine opens the exploit and pretty much is compromised. Now, the question then comes is, how do you prevent such exploits? A simple way of preventing these exploits is to be able to see them from a user's perspective, directly as an end user sees it. There are products and technologies that are pretty much that emulate an end user's behavior and let you investigate the incoming or ongoing data stream in its full entirety. So the two canonical use cases is, number one, to set up data diodes. Data diode is a mechanism to set up a one-way exchange of information from an untrusted source into a trusted source. The other is a way to set up a host of virtual machine-based or virtual machine-enabled security platforms that can go out and proactively scan the websites and identify any malware that lie on those websites and alert the administrators at the back end. So these were the two canonical use cases that I found most intriguing, and the reason why I say that is because their beauty lies in their simplicity. The way they end up exploiting an end user system the trust model between the client and the server or the service provider. And likewise, the way they exploit the workflow. There is no single silver bullet remedy for such exploits. So with this thought on the table, I would take your leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I invite the last speaker for this session, but a very important speaker, Mr. Piyush Pandey, Inspector General, Special Protection Group. Sir, we request you to please address the audience.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me confess, when I was approached to come here, I really didn't know what I would be speaking, because, well, it's not a technical domain for me. My expertise lies, of course, by education I might have done electronics long back, but that was 25 years back, so I'm quite old. Now my expertise is security. So I'm more of as a user than anything else. So I would like to stick to the concerns that we have. Having heard most of the speakers earlier, I have been making my points which I want to highlight, which of course I might have written down. Somebody has spoken, so I want to delete that. So please forgive me for referring to my papers as I go along. Anish, of course, just before me spoke on the various ways security has been taken care of, and immediately after that, Manu, of course, went ahead and told what are the exploits that are being used. So that justifies our case of security. Yes, as a user, I would like as much as ease and efficiency that any technology would offer. But by the profession that I am in, I am very reluctant to take it very, very easy. Anish, of course, went on, and before that, of course, other speakers, Prakash, went on to speak of certain certification. My question is if I doubt those certifications. My adversary is not a hacker. My adversary is not somebody who is going to exploit or learn. My adversary may be a person who is making that system. So how do I trust that certification itself? Anish, of course, spoke of the 9 security threats that have been enumerated by the Cloud Security Alliance, and he has focused on the last 2, insufficient knowledge of the users, and of course the shared technology vulnerabilities. I would go to a little bit of further on the earlier ones, which are a lot of concern. Now, I have a lot of data which, as you said, is secure, needs to be secure. But I am still not very convinced by the fact that my data is there. Whatever you may do, even if you encrypt it, my concept would say that the encrypted data is there. When I am doing my work, my unencrypted data is there. My encryption algorithm is there, and my key is there. So what stops from anybody? How secure or how valuable is my encryption? Who would, in fact, evaluate that encryption? As you would know, those who work in the government, there are certain other evaluations that need to be done. Are those people who would develop those encryption ready for such evaluations? I am not simply concerned that my data is secure in a data center. I am very concerned as to who is securing them, who are the employees who have that access to that data. not only my employees, employees who have gone afterwards, but employees of the service provider. What accesses do they have? And it is these concerns that, as Anish said, prevents a lot of us from actually using the potential of the cloud in a much efficient manner. Having said the concerns, I would like to, of course, come back to where Anish said about the ignorance. The ignorance of the user in the government setup is phenomenal, as you all would know. I'll tell you of a very simple case that happened when I was in Calcutta Police. It was in the year 2002 that we had an attack in front of an American Center case, and we lost 5 of our constables in an attack. All the communications between the persons who were doing that kidnapping or initiating that attack on the police personnel were based in Dubai. All calls were routed through US. All emails were routed through the various servers. We, of course, went into detail, got all the details. But the first task was, in fact, educating my men, of course, of what are the things that happen, how it happen. And after not only educating my men to investigate the case, come out with all the evidences that have, the importance of then educating the public prosecutor into presenting that case. And after that, the public prosecutor had been educated, it was educating the judge, because he was not convinced, he did not know what a user ID or a password was. So the first thing for the usage in government sector, as Anish said, is the lack of knowledge of or the consciousness of the user who is going to use these systems. If I'm confident of his, as I'm distrusting the user or the service provider, I'm distrusting myself, because do I, in my own way, not make the whole system vulnerable and expose it to all the leakages which may happen. So for me it is very important not only to trust them, trust the person who has made the system or who has presented me the system, trust myself. Because if I am not very, very confident of using it, and I might leak my secrets, I'm something which I'm not very confident. Therefore, that what I would like to present here is, you are a lot of technology-oriented people who are associated in this field. You have to prepare standard operating procedures. Now, if I have to, as he said, what level of security? If I have to have a bullet, security against a normal bullet would be a small armor, but against a tank that will not work. So security would, of course, depend on the level of opposition that I foresee. Now, having said that, in the various government departments all across the agencies, there will be different levels of secrecy that they require. So therefore, how do I evaluate what is the level of protection I need? How do I evaluate the service provider that I will look forward to? So that is where we need the industry to guide us, the intelligentsia to guide us as to what are the questions that I need to ask. The most important for me would be the questions I need to ask me or any government agency as to what is that I am using there, with whom I am storing, what are the security protocols that they are using, and therefore, is it worthy enough to implement it with them or not? So my intention here was more to ask you to look into this aspect. Yes, technology will go ahead at a very fast pace, but you have, if you really want certain people like us who are very skeptical,
you will have to guide us as to these are the questions that you need to ask. And if those questions are answered in the affirmative, then of course you're free to take your services. Otherwise, it will become very, very difficult for us sometimes. Not all services, because there are many services, there are many things which might not be confidential, which I'll be very happy to use the services of the in the cloud. But there are certain things which I'll not be really eager to put it on the cloud. So I leave it to that to all of you. Think over it, because the problem is we don't have these standards which will help us ask what are the requirements, what are the questions that we need to ask, what are the operating procedures before choosing a provider, before choosing what to put, what applications to put, what data to put, and what not to put. I leave it at that so that you can come with those answers in the future and help us take it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Ma'am Neeta Verma to give a concluding remark, please.
At the outset, I'd like to compliment all the speakers for very, very informative talks. In fact, I personally had an opportunity to take my attention to a lot of things which perhaps normally I would not have, so it's been there. And we've been very fortunate that we really had a very diverse set of speakers which have given us perspective from technology point of view, who have given us perspective from security as experts point of view, from government point of view, and as well as the international scenario. So we really had a comprehensive thing, and thank you everyone from there. And above all, we had a perspective from an apex security organization of the government, which is very important, from where the whole philosophy comes down. So it was good to have that. We primarily had two themes, efficiency and security. And if you all agree with me, I think we all unanimously agreed as far as efficiency is concerned. Cloud does give us efficiency. But the scale of efficiency you will be able to leverage over cloud depends on the kind of competency the cloud service providers, and also the kind of agility you as an organization have, or a kind of agility your procurement procedures have, that how fast can you take decisions on that. So it's a combination of two things: how good are your security or your service provider, and how agile or how flexible are your processes. Coming to security, we had different opinions here, and I think that's what has been the scenario all over the world. People are really concerned about security. But largely, if you look at it, even when we had data centers, we had servers, and we've exposed them to internet, these concerns have been there. Now, when it becomes to cloud and security, the issues becomes a little more complex. But issues were there earlier too. So what it really needs is, it needs a highly competent and sensitive organization to manage the cloud. And when we're saying security, we're not only talking about the cyber security, we need to even address the issues of physical security, as was highlighted by one of the panelists. And at the same time, it also, as you know, in our physical world, when we talk of, we always say it's howsoever excellent secure organizations could be. As in citizen, we all have to be always aware, we have to be vigilant to be really able to secure us and our families. To a large extent, the same philosophy goes when we come to our servers and when we come to our servers on cloud, or our data for that matter. It also needs the consumer also to be quite vigilant, consumer also to be aware. So a lot of perhaps education should be done by service providers or by technology providers to the user, that when you are cloud, these are the things you need to be really looking at. These are the kind of reports you should be asking. These are the kind of notifications you should be asking, so that you always have a tap what is happening in your data, where is it flowing, and things like that. So it's actually a combination of technology and processes, and more of a capacity, not really a sensitization of the individuals who are going to use it. So once we have this combination, we're really going to have, and cloud definitely is going to take off. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request you to present mementos to the eminent speakers. And we are very thankful to ma'am. First to start with, Mr. Piyush Pandey, Inspector General, Special Production Group. A big round of applause for our guest, please. And Mr. Prakash Kumar, National Technology Officer, Microsoft India. A round of applause for Prakash Kumar ji. Then Mr. Rudolf Roshan Sekira, Solution Architect, Wipro Infotech. Mr. Anish Dhawan, Regional Manager, VMware India, North and East. And Mr. Manu Kalra, Director, Product Management, Asia Pacific and Japan, FireEye. And now one request to Piyush Pandey sir to present the memento to Ma'am Neeta Verma, Deputy Director General, National Informatics Center. May I request a group photo of this?